The Oakland court found out, of course, the Oakland court was involved because it was a potentially criminal situation. Nobody could believe what we had done. My intern was cross-examined on the witness stand and ridiculed, and she stood up to all of that because it was all true that had really happened. Like I said, I've got hundreds, if not thousands, of stories. I try to tell them so I don't forget them.
I'm glad that you get to tell them here on this show with me.
Yes, because I want to put out what's possible. I don't pretend it's easy. I do say it's worth it. And there's I wrote books about it, published widely. There are other people. Leo Buscaglia became famous for doing things like this with murderers in prison and the families of the victims who were murdered. People have done what I'm doing that are more well-known. But yeah, I want to keep this alive because we are in an era of not so much coaching, but certainly therapies where empathy for suffering has gone. It can't deliver what they want it to. In fact, it does. It causes more problems. You have to have admiration. You have to have looking at what's beautiful about people, not just how they were hurt. And the therapist has to give up I hate to say it, but I was into it. There's a pleasure you feel in being able to go into dark places with clients.
Yes.
That's for the therapist. And the client will do whatever the therapist says. Like I say, a little bit of that, yes. But that is not going to teach them how to be happy in life. That's a whole other set of skills about receiving and giving compliments and admiration and gratitude that all of us have to learn about. Let me just take a moment. Thank you. Let me thank you, Victor. Really, when I met you, I felt so lucky. Firstly, because we were wrestlers, like you said.
Yes, absolutely.
There's an immediate brototherhood, and we're lightweights, right?
That's right.
I used to be 125 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I wrestled the same weight.
So you feel like, wow, there's the only person in this group that I really knows what that's about. So I just wanted to take that tangent to say, yeah, I can take that tangent. Anybody can. And it adds to our interview because I really do feel close to you. From that alone.
Likewise, I remember it was an instant bond, that first conversation.
Yeah, weight loss and having to make weight and then be in these combative situations and you only have 6 minutes and then you're like exhausted.
Exactly. Hardest 6 minutes you'll ever have done consistently. Right. It's a wonderful practice, I think, for enduring and for mindset. There's something that came up today. I was listening to a podcast and they mentioned this African proverb that I found fascinating. And it seems like it's very related to our conversation, but the proverb basically said they were talking about this idea of how everybody has this innate desire and need for belonging, like they want to belong to something, whether it's in a relationship or in a group, a community. And the proverb was, if a child is not embraced by the village, they will burn it down to feel its warmth. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, holy shit. I'm curious, what is your perspective on that idea or that proverb?
I worked in juvenile prevention, juvenile justice, juvenile delinquency prevention for 5 years. So I take it very literally. Kids who are beaten down or who make mistakes and are engaged with, and they have lots of issues, poverty, there's all kinds of things. But juvenile crime and like the shooter, all these different things I could analyze and tell you. Yeah, if they will be cries for help, you could say. And yeah, if you can give the help that's needed, which is usually but credible admiration. And you have to teach people how to believe, particularly kids, that you're not just manipulating them. This is street savvy. That's a whole other category, is you have to have street savvy when working, certainly with people that could be destructive or have created crime already, because they're very used to being conned by the authority figures, whether it's teachers. They just want to lie and get out of there. So I don't want to come across like I don't know what's going on. So yeah, these kids that want to burn down and ruin my life for that matter, they're dangerous in different ways. So you have to be savvy, if I can say it that way.
Yes.
And I would teach yoga practices and then do it in a way kids would open their eyes. They go, "What the fuck was that, man?" Yeah, I'll tell you what I did. They gave me a grant. I had $170,000. That would be like almost $1 million today. to do whatever I thought would help. Because you were asking about, if the kid isn't taken care of, he'll burn down the village.
Yes.
That was the gist of it. And and it takes a whole village. And then winning the trust of kids that have been treated as if they're little criminals. And they're cons by then too. It's not like they're just your regular kid. There's a lot of defensiveness that you have to work your way through. But this was really one of my more beautiful memories, and in my own innocence, you could even say. So I had just discovered yoga, and in the way I had told you about getting up at 4 a.m. and all this, and I was teaching it in this lockup near Atlantic City in a pleasant, what was it called, Egg Harbor, New Jersey, in their lockup environment. And I said, look, I'm going to come and sleep outside the facility so I can wake up at 4 a.m. and you got to let me in so I can meet with the kids and we'll do yoga the way it's supposed to be done. So I didn't know what I was doing. I was sleeping out in the winter. It was freezing out there.
Wow. That's some stoic voluntary discomfort.
A big test of myself. But so I got in and kids were laughing, and it was really, we were being somewhat like children again. But lots of things. So I found out that the parents have to be heavily admired. Because you want to rehabilitate the family that they come from so that they can love their children again, because the kids are like sources of shame, and the parents are failures, the kids are in jail. And I'll tell you a quick story. I had a kid he was going to be incarcerated. We were going to the sentencing hearing, and the father and the kid and me are in my probation office. And I'm only like 27, 28 years old. I'm just discovering this method myself. I hadn't been trained in it at all. But this one event stayed with me my whole career, like 1976, 50 or 46 years ago. The father, they're really, shame is in the room and embarrassment. And they're going to go before the judge, and the judge is going to say, I sentence you to 6 months, blah, blah, blah. And the father is there. And so somehow the father's smoking cigarettes like a madman in my office. He's extremely frustrated and nervous. And the son, 16-year-old guy, feels horrible and moody and all that. And for some reason, the son says, Dad, you have a cigarette? And the father, says, okay, here. And so the two of them lean, like you can picture this, they lean and they light the cigarettes and they're taking an inhale. And all of a sudden, I just decide to say, Sheldon, could you thank your dad for the cigarette? And because it was small.
Yeah, small gesture.
Small, good thing. And I don't know, I'd never done it before. And he said, yeah, thanks, Dad. And the father, I saw a little tear in the father's eyes.
Wow. Because
the father had a moment where he did a good thing for his son. And the son could be a good son by thanking his father for this simple little thing. And it was very small. This is meditation. I focus 100% on that little tear. All the rest of it evaporated. The jail, the lockup, I just saw that little tear. And then when I said that, I said, look in your father's eye. When you thanked him, you got to his heart. And then the son jolted. And then I'd say, yeah, this is the real connection between the two of you. And this is going to, and then I said, not all fathers even will come to a hearing like this. Most of the time, the kid has to walk down alone. You're looking at your father. It's not easy, but he's here by your side. And the son also is jolted. So is the father. They're not ready to be complimented at a time like this.
No, I can imagine.
And so I'm saying this is really a loyal love of father and son. And then I would say, yeah, this image will stay with your son during the next 6 months. And you will fulfill why you came, is to be a support to him. And he will never forget while he's away. And then we'll continue on and learn from these mistakes and have your family back. So that was 1976. I can still see that scene in my memory banks. And what I do is I thank, like I even alluded to it, when I had that gun case 40 years later, I did the same thing. I thanked him for coming to my office, for coming through the traffic. And then later on, I told him why. I said, the reason I thanked you is you gave me a chance to keep you out of jail.
That's amazing.
You gave me a chance to help you not lose your license for your career. Because if you had been arrested for that or thrown out, your life would have been ruined. So I want to thank you for giving me the chance to help you. So this is, different versions of seeing there's one drop in the cup, not half empty or half full. There's one drop of something. And if you focus on it, it becomes 10 drops. And after a while, hearts are opening. Chemistry is different in the brain and the nervous system. It's not adrenaline, it's oxytocin. They call it the love hormone. People look different, they feel different. And then you can make declarations of how to go forward with life.
That's beautiful. I really like that, because when I think about the way that humans interact with one another, this idea of showing enough empathy to get context and to show understanding, and then moving on into admiration and gratitude for the person across from you, I imagine is a way of showing them like, yes, I understand. And I'm also going to choose to speak to the best parts of you. And there's a transformation that occurs with that. Anytime anybody's ever asked me about what I'm focusing on when I'm coaching with somebody, for the majority of the session, with the exception of the empathetic part where we're going into the dark of what they've been through, I'm speaking to the best parts of them or the best version of them. And in essence, calling it out into being, which it seems like you've done a very similar thing, if not the same thing, with everybody that you've worked with.
Exactly. It's just 50 years, you get 40,000 hours of different situations. And there is a range. So you made me think of another one of seeing the best, not over empathizing. This was an intern I had. He was learning to be a therapist. And he said, Stuart, could I have 10 minutes to just tell you a personal thing going on? I said, sure. And he said, my girlfriend just told me she's pregnant. And I don't really know what to do. And she says, I'll have the child. You don't have to be a part of this. It was not our goal. And he's thinking, yeah, that's probably the way to go. And so what I really want to use this as an example is you have to find a way to bring the best out in people. And often you have to do it in a way that they can make two different choices. You can't make it just be one way that you prove yourself to be the best.
That's right.
And the abortion situation it's in the news, it's in the Supreme Court. And you have to be very egalitarian about this issue. What should I do? Should I be a father? Or should I go with the flow? She'll have either raise the child or have an abortion, in which I think it was going to be an abortion, if I recall. I said, and I don't want him to, I'm not a religious believing approach. I'm using psychology. So what I said to him was, to bring the best out, I'd say, look, at whatever you do is you have a free choice. It's all available. There's no stigma. You can do what you want. Your girlfriend is happy to do. She's not going to hate you or whatever, or she'll make whatever you want. Because he had said, I don't know if I'm ready. Now, when I hear that, I hear what I call boilerplate. Boilerplate is thoughts that people think that they're their own thought. But I don't think that. I think they're grabbing boilerplate off of the media, off of all kinds of messaging that's out in the world.
Psychology.
Exactly. Nobody thinks I'm not ready. They're taught that is what you should think. He's 33, 34 years old. He's ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
He wants it. He can do it. So I say, listen, it's a real choice. It's not like you can't do it. It's a default. I could never do this, because you'll live with that the rest of your life. Oh, I couldn't do that. Well, what couldn't you have done? And I say, you have to believe that you could have done it.
That's right.
But doesn't mean you have to do it. That's the religious approach, is you could have do it, you better do it. Scott, you have to do it. But in the psychological arena, I can make it harder. You can do it, but you don't have to do it. The other people on the pro-choice, they don't like to get that much into that you could do it. They love to make it like it's the worst thing possible. It's going to ruin your life. It's sacrificing the life of the mother. They make it really horrendous. So everybody has an easy time choosing to terminate. So what I'm saying is, you can terminate there. It's legal. Everybody's going to go with the flow with it. But I want you to believe that you could do it if you wanted to. Why? Because I think that's a very powerful aspect of human identity, is the ability to grow to the level. All Darwinism, the foundation of the view of success of life on this planet, is Darwinism. Nobody really argues much about what I'm saying. The genetic survival of the gene pool is who reproduces. So parenting and stabilized families are the basis of how children grow up. And yeah, we have the generations of people that are worried about that they're not capable of it.
That's right.
So what I said is, you could do this if you wanted to. That's the only thing I add. And then think about, do you want to do it or not? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But don't think that you couldn't have done it.
Like it was cast upon you, this idea.
Yeah, you could never do it because, yeah, it's a limited belief system. So a couple of weeks went by, or I don't remember exactly, but he said, guess what? I'm going to be a father.
Wow.
Decided to marry his girlfriend. And of course, then his heart really opened, completely unpredicted. And she's a good person. It wasn't like a one night stand. And so I'll tell you that now it's 12 years later, he's got 2 kids now.
He doubled down on the fatherhood, quite literally.
Exactly. So I don't mean that I'm saying, oh, yeah, pro-life or pro-choice or anything. I'm just getting to your point, bringing the best out of people and then thinking it through in a wide range of human conundrums.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it seems like a lot of people, they close their hearts not through their own sincere thoughts, but through boilerplate thoughts, through collective psychology. They actually close themselves off and they voluntarily accept these as their own, which they're giving sovereignty to these things that are limiting them and causing excessive suffering, right? There's going to be a natural amount of suffering that occurs as a sentient being, but they're casting in or allowing in excessive suffering into their lives simply by giving their sovereignty to the boilerplate psychology and allowing those cliches and belief systems to be part of their model of the world, which when we put it like that, it sounds insane. We're allowing these like very non-specific ways of being that are just in there in the ether to be our own individual experience, which there's nothing that says that we have to accept that. And so that's quite interesting.
Yeah, and it's popular and also in professional psychology, like this path of empathy. I've been watching it, and I publish books on this. Usually take flack because I'm a whistleblower within my own profession.
Good.
This is back to Stoicism. I had to do what was right, even if it cost me jobs and people that didn't understand me. But I did have a background that's unassailable. If the Dalai Lama does projects with you, it's hard for people to say too much that you must be on the wrong track.
That's right. There's an inherent credibility there.
Over and over again. Yeah. Presidents of countries and the Princeton background, all these different things, they have to wonder. And yeah, that's why I like talking and doing podcasts, because now a lot of my things are coming to light.
Yeah.
Teaching meditation. I was the first person ever to teach meditation in a lockup or in a school system. I taught it to police. I taught it to the police departments, of juvenile department, and nobody even knew what meditation was. Now it's everywhere.
Now it's everywhere.
Yeah. So I know that I was ahead of my times, and that's part of the integrity, I think, which you're all about. If you think something's right and you're ahead of your times, you may spend your whole career watching the pendulum finally swing and you're into what you were interested in.
Correct.
But then if your gaze is still continuing, you see where it's still happening.
It's very true. That's interesting because it reminds me of, and I think you heard me speak on this at the last retreat that we were at together, the Zen Stoic intentions and delusions. And we talked about this idea of sincerity versus performance. And sincerity is doing what's right according to what you genuinely believe is right, and not performing or not having an intention to please the masses or the organizing body that employs you. In your case, being willing to be sincere in what your thoughts and what your feelings were about certain issues that came up.
Exactly. Yeah. There's faith, but you start getting the thoughts to keep talking about what your goal is about, so you can achieve it. Yeah.
There'll be other people who are given the courage by your courageousness to be sincere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you start, uplifting whatever profession. In the architectural profession, I thought green was, this is at 1988, was no green. Yeah. And I knew Jerry Brown was the mayor of Atlantic City at that time. And he had actually run for president about maybe 10 or 15 years before. So he was pretty famous. He was the governor of California 30 years before that. He launched a communication satellite. There was no such thing as communication satellite, and they ridiculed him. The newspapers called him Governor Moonbeam to make him look like an idiot. And we now there's thousands of communication satellites.
Oh yeah, of course. And it seems very prevalent, this idea. And actually something I've been wanting to ask you like throughout this conversation, I think this is a good point to bring it in, is I notice when I observe society, when I observe it, regardless of whatever like realm it's in, whether it's politics, whether it's a crime, whether it's just somebody espousing a different belief system from their family unit, there seems to be this obsession with punishment and shame and ridicule when people step outside the bounds. From your perspective, what's that all about? Because it seems very counterproductive to
Sure.
the blossoming of a good society.
Yeah. I don't subscribe to the telling truth to power. The way it's understood is being done properly, because it's always some criticism. It's always some shaming of power, and you're speaking truth to power. It's like the Boston Tea Party over and over again. What really is power is when you give admiration. And I'm not like sweeping stuff under the rug that's bad. I'm saying if you want to win friends and influence people, that was Napoleon Hill. You don't speak up in such a way that everybody's pissed off at you and you polarize the room, but you feel it's very self-righteous. I don't subscribe to that. And I've done some really serious things in that. With the Rockefeller family, preventing litigation against his family by a bunch of hippies that were really ready to go. My background is endless on these topics, but now we're getting into speaking up in a group and getting pushback. And so what I just wanted to sort out is, if you're going to speak up to a group and shame them with your righteous criticism, I'm not that interested in that. I don't think it works.
I don't
But
think
what I do know that does work, say it in prisons. I've done this in prisons with the whole staff, including the warden. I don't say, what the hell, how are we treating these kids? I say stuff like, I want you all to go home and tell your wives, and the kids are there too, the locked up kids. I'm saying, I want you all to go home and tell your wives, and when you get out of here, tell your parents that you love them and that you want to have a beautiful family. You don't want to be in prisons anymore. And we'll help you do that. How many other times they've ever heard that before or since? Probably zero. Oh, yeah, you must be angry at your mom.
Right.
Yeah, you're angry. They love anger because one person, Fritz Perls, has made anger be very popular. And this is where history is important. That one person, Elon Musk, he decides to make electrical cars. It starts happening. Fritz Perls did that with anger. And he was an incredibly angry human being. And he looked really tough. He'd do groups and call people phonies at Esalen Institute, where all this started, by the way.
Wow.
Coaching, all this history goes back to Esalen Institute. That's where they got into, and they were definitely into the wrong approach. And the best way is to see the best in people, put it into accurate words, small level. But then, like I said, the rubber eventually hits the road where they have to do actually harder things, whether it's learn how to read, which they don't know how to do, or learn how to be a mechanic, or join the military and let them help you, or have a girlfriend and not mess it up, or a boyfriend and get them two together. These skills, they're not just everywhere that you need. Once you start feeding the best in people, they start getting hopeful, but that doesn't end there. I found, that's where I got into marriage counseling, is to help them form a home life. I have a lot of kids that were born as a result of what I'm now telling you about. A lot of families. 50 years is a lot of thousands of people. And they start to get it. They're equal to life. And they're not instant therapy year after year talking about their trauma, because we're talking about, what you were saying, with the strengths that they have. But then they have to believe me. And then there's all kinds of quirky things. Like when they thank me, I'm their therapist, I have to say that means more to me than you would ever guess, because I want them to feel that more powerful across from me in their gratitude, what the impact has on me. So you're trained not even to talk about that.
Which is so backwards, because something I had learned recently is that gratitude, while it feels really good to feel yourself, it has profound effects when someone expresses gratitude to you. Like when you receive gratitude, it's and I don't understand it probably to the degree that you do, I'm sure. But when you give gratitude, it's one thing. When you receive it, it's like this whole other level of things that are happening. Could you speak to that for a bit? What is the difference there?
Yeah, there's a lot. Every inch has to be learned. You get shy. People say, oh, what a great guy you are. You get shy. It's hard even to say thank you. You don't know what to do. So I found to teach people to say thank you for saying that. And then to look at the other person, because when you say thank you, you're a giver. You think you're a receiver. It sounds like, oh, thank you, I'm a receiver. But when you say thank you, it's an act of giving to the other person.
That's right.
And you look at it, it has a huge impact on the other person. So now you have to get out of your bubbles. You're two different, you're in an ecological giving and receiving. So he says, yeah, you're really helping my life. And the other person, the therapist says, wow, that makes me feel so beautiful. Take a look at me right now.
Mm.
And the client has to learn to take a look and say, you caused that look. You see
That's
those
right.
tears in my eyes? You caused them.
That's right.
And you'll cause that anytime you say, you thank people. And
It's
if you
so
don't
true.
do it, that means you're depriving people from now on. If you, it's not just
I love that you said that. Yeah, I love that you said that because I every time I have a conversation with a client or even like a friend who has difficulty receiving compliments or receiving help, I actually bring up something that the retreat that you and I originally met at in Sedona. I think we talked about this, and this was probably my biggest takeaway from that weekend was that to give is to receive, and to receive is to give. There's this kind of harmonious relationship that's happening between those two expressions. And whenever I'm talking to clients and they're like, oh, I just give and I have trouble receiving, or I don't like getting help or whatever. And I asked them, I said, how does it feel when you give to somebody? Like when you give to them and they're really appreciative, they're like, oh, it feels amazing. There's nothing like it. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, would you consider yourself a taker? And they're like, no, not at all. I'm like, okay, you're taking that away by not receiving, not allowing others to help you. So you're actually giving something that maybe you've never even thought of just by receiving something that is also good for you, some admiration, some compliments, some gratitude, and being able to take that in. It creates a more harmonious relationship and, quite frankly, a beautiful experience between the two parties who are exchanging that.
It's mutually empowering. Deeply receive is empowering, but it reciprocally it empowers the giver because they see the impact. If you go, oh, it's oh, thank you. If you say, yeah, there was nothing. But if you say, wow, that really touched me, that gratitude, you're letting the person know that their expression was very powerful. Or you can make it weak and just change the subject.
Yeah, which is,
this is
one of the worst things you can do.
It just erode the nourishment. And it becomes ongoing.
That's right.
Then it becomes a way of life. Then you realize, a little teaspoon given back and forth all the time. It's a way of life called the path of love and gratitude. And then you realize it's more enjoyable than having complaint sessions and I'm not feeling loved and dealing with that. Instead, you say, how about, what do you love about me? And then you start saying, thank you for saying that instead of it's about time. You can tell I'm used to all this.
Oh, yeah. No, I shared the story last time we were together where I was talking about Heather, my girlfriend, and how I love cooking for her and doing things for her. It brings me a lot of joy. The way that she thanks me and expresses gratitude every time I do that is as if it's the first time that I'm ever doing it. And as a result, not only do I enjoy doing it more, but I've actually, like, specifically in the realm of cooking, I've gotten exponentially better at the craft of cooking because I'm receiving this gratitude from her, and it makes me actively want to do it more, not just do it more, but do it better. And so I get more curious. I'll catch myself like daydreaming about like stuff that I want to cook. And that's never happened in my life until she started expressing that gratitude every time I would make her a meal. So I just started getting fascinated with the whole process of it. And it's obviously felt really good at the same time to be able to do that.
You guys are a very beautiful couple, and I felt lucky, honored, lucky for the time we spent having conversations with the three of us.
Yeah.
And what you're just now describing, it makes me brim with happiness for you guys.
Thank you. That I received that. But it means a lot for you to say that. Heather was very excited that I was going to be having you on the show. She's like, Stuart's my bestie. So she was definitely thrilled for that. There's a couple other things I wanted to ask you, because I know you had mentioned something like this is I would say a different topic, but not really. I think just different context from what we're talking about. But I remember at the retreat we were talking about where the world is going and what the political climate looks like between almost like the division between parties and belief systems, and how it's seeming to become more and more apparent. And you had some ideas as to potential solutions that you would basically bring in with that opportunity. What could you speak to some of those? Because there seems to be a lot of division, especially in the political climate, in people's varying belief systems. And it goes back to this idea of like people wanting to either punish or overly empathize. And there seems to be nothing in between.
Yeah. If I don't answer what you're thinking about, let me know, because it's a big topic. It's a giant topic. But in general, I say when there's like polarization, it means that there's a solution that needs yet to be discovered that would be a win-win for both points of view.
Correct.
So that I like pro-life, pro-choice. That's I know a lot about, and also conflict resolution. Let me start with conflict resolution because there's a good example. Like the World War I Christmas Day truce. I think it's 1914. You have horrible trench warfare of World War I was horrible because they didn't have these big weapons. You were like, you could see and hear each other. You weren't like 30 miles away in the Ukraine. So they're like, it's horrible. And they're in these muddy trenches dying. They can't get out. They're shooting back and forth. For some reason, there was a truce on Christmas Eve. They all stopped shooting for supposedly overnight or something. And a weird thing happened. The Germans and the French started coming out of their foxholes and exchanging gifts.
Wow.
They were giving chocolates and cookies back and forth. And these were people that an hour before they were taking each other's heads off and had killed each other's probably best friends and all the rest of it. So this is a real life example of a solution to, at least for a couple of weeks, they wouldn't go back to killing each other. They had to be ordered back to warfare.
Like, how could I go back and kill that guy? He just gave me a present.
Exactly. And so it was the real Christ spirit had an impact. So that should be studied. There are the Camp David Accords was, if you know about that, Egypt and Israel had one of their many wars over the last 5,000 years. Around 1976, they were killing each other like they always have. And then there's Camp David Accord came out. They stopped, and it's been like 46 years. Nobody's been between those two countries. They don't kill each other. These are Jews and Arabs.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable.
But
how did it happen? Yeah, it's unbelievable. But what happened was Jimmy Carter and the other two guys, President of Egypt, Anwar Sadat, and Menachem Begin of Israel, out of a fluke, Carter had a little bit of a trickster plan. He shared baby child photos with them. And these three grandpas signed autographed photos of each other's children. And they started weeping.
Wow.
Why are we killing each other's children? And then they were failing. They couldn't make the peace treaty. Suddenly they could. There's a play called Camp David. You can see it. There's a lot of articles about the Christmas truce, 1914. So those are two big ones. Now back to, you'd have to follow it up. But if somebody does, yeah, we could, make an award, give it to Putin and Zelensky. Look we're going to have a win-win. You may not get what you thought you wanted, but you're going to get something else. The whole world is going to be crying about what heroes you are, that you created a win-win truce.
Yes.
And everybody knows there's problems on both sides. We're going to do it the right way. That's what I did my whole career with divorces, getting them back together. They want to have abortion. I'd say you don't have to. Now there's 2 kids born. A lot of kids are born. So I'm very familiar at the local level of creating these win-win outcomes in new ways. So yeah, you could create an award. The Nobel Peace Prize is a weak version. But you could do it and really make it be that you have from then on, there's a Vladimir Putin, Vladimir Zelensky honorary holiday forever. Of what these two men did, they stopped in their tracks and they grieved. And then they created a Slavic brotherhood. And they got rid of all the criminality that whatever needs to go, but not in the way of warfare where you're shooting lots of innocent people. That it should be a very specific. That's how police work. They go for the criminal, not everyone in the neighborhood.
That's right.
So that's a thumbnail response to my views about world history. But the pro-life, pro-choice is another area. I've got many areas, but this one is in Tantra. As we talked a little bit about Tantra, I was developing the theory for you, that the outcome of that theory is a body where the male prostate never ejaculates unless it wants to. And what happens instead, there's a lot more that happens. There's an orgasm of the heart that's available. And that is so powerful that the genitals aren't carrying the whole weight of where sex even takes place.
Wow.
So Tantra is a huge, different body. And it was in the pagans' fertility cults, the Greeks, the Dionysian cults. They were aware of what I'm talking about. But what an orgy was to the Dionysians is not what we think it was. Because they had all this, their hormone systems were creating natural entheogens. The brains were overloading, creating oxytocin, which is MDMA, or serotonin levels were like LSD. They were high as a kite because their glands were so mature with these puberties I'm describing. I'm publishing on it. I believe in the next 20, 30 years, what I saw with yoga in 1970, they laughed at me. Now it's in every prison in the world. I think it's everywhere. Nobody laughs about yoga anymore. And I'm saying about Tantra and the tantric body. What happens is couples have lovemaking. I don't know, I think it's anybody who had it happen. It's like choosing between psilocybin or a martini. You start seeing there's a
very easy choice.
Yeah, they're both interesting, but psilocybin for most people would be like really interesting. So sex of sharing these hormones, and there's thousands of ways, hundreds of ways. The easiest way to describe on a little call like this is kissing. The salivary immunoglobulin A, big word for this, the entheogens of the brain to come into the French kissing, the realm of French kissing, of wet kisses. So you get to a level where you're kissing somebody who worships you because you're the source of life, which you are as a man. And likewise, the female, source of life, not just a girlfriend. When you're crying because you realize this is the link to God, and God is where life even comes from, whether you're Darwin or you're Adam and Eve or whatever you want to think about it. You're kissing the source of where your parents conceived you and great-great-grandparents. It's all through this. But now you're having up at the brain level, where the ejaculation is really near the source, because sex hormones start up here in the hypothalamus. They send the signals to the genitals. So Tantra knows this. It's known it for 5,000 years. And all yoga is about what I'm saying. And no one will talk about it except scholars who know what I'm talking. I think 10, 20 years, everybody's going to catch up to what I'm now talking about. And the payoff will be that lovemaking won't risk unintended pregnancies. That ends the whole battle. Forget about even for the battle of right to life, pro-choice, contraceptives, because this is better sex. So getting to what I said originally, when you have a polarization somewhere at a big level, politics, groups, I believe it's usually you have to look for an answer that people don't yet know about, and it satisfies both groups. Yeah, the liberals want to have sexual lives. They don't want to just be straight-laced. But on the other hand, the people that want their sexual freedom, they have to fight for abortion. Shocking, but they have to. There's no way around it. But what it really points to is the earth is not flat. You don't go over the edge. It's really round. And the metaphor I'm saying is there's ejaculations in your brain. Now I have to say that was what I meditated on for 45 now it's getting closer to 50 years. I meditated not on my breath. Like I said earlier, I meditated on fertility. And that's what made my life, I think, be fruitful in any area I turn my attention to.
It's amazing.
Business projects. I'm a therapist. I'm doing mediation. I'm working in prisons. I'm bringing yoga first ever into a prison. My work is certified by the Russian government on admiration therapy. I do projects with the Dalai Lama. How did this all happen? I'm not that much different than anybody else, but I did do this one thing that is very rare, at least as I had these puberties happen. My chemistry is not the same. There's a story in Be Here Now, this Ram Dass book, when LSD was brought to India for the first time. This guy from Harvard gave it to a guru in India, gave him 3 tabs of very powerful LSD. And the guy said nothing happened because his brain was secreting so much LSD that he could read Ram Dass's mind and tell him what he ate 3 days before in some village 100 miles away. But say, oh, you were having this candy, weren't you? Before 3 days ago in this little sweet shop. And this guy lives in the Himalayan mountains. He doesn't know shit about anything, but he reads the guy's mind. That's why the whole new age exists. Ram Dass, Harvard professor, takes LSD, looks for answers in India, meets this guy who reads his mind. And he says, if this guy can read my mind, he must know more about the mind than anyone at Harvard or anywhere else. And what I'm saying is, that the guru's mind was his hypothalamus was creating basically LSD. And when couples share this in their salivation through kissing, you're not going to have abortions. You're not, because intercourse will be understood that you want the hormones of fertility to never be blocked, either mentally or through pills or anything, because you want it flowing through the body, because then it can cause this kind of brain secretion.
That's profound. It's definitely paradigm shifting to think about it in that way. It's definitely blowing my mind a little bit, because I just never even conceived of that being a thing or that being possible. But it's definitely now an area of curiosity and exploration.
Well, I didn't think computers were going to happen in 1960. I'll tell you that.
And
or electric cars,
talking
or an
on
internet.
video.
The whole thing is changing. And yoga, when we realize, it's just going to be a matter of time. I'm just translating a little bit more than my friends are, and they're not therapists, so they don't talk much about psychological impact. This is the missing ingredient. It starts to be exchanged. Then you have children conceived consciously. What does that mean? The awe of creating life, and it's not blocked by, it's not really a baby or not. All that is no longer needed, because you're not worried about all that. So you're feeling, and then that child who's born, the parents feel the awe of that moment, 9 months, and then first year, it never goes away. In 2 to 3 generations of this, we have a different species of
completely
human
different
being.
Consciousness running through the collective at that point. So that's really beautiful as a compelling vision for humanity. Before we begin to wrap up, I have one last question.
Let me just say one thing about that.
Go for it.
One more thing, just for your crowd. This is my entrepreneurial, is if soon as any Hollywood production studio that makes a movie with special effects about couples, like what I just said, they're going to make millions and millions of dollars, and they're going to change humanity, because that's how sexuality came to America or the world, was through Hollywood. They were making movies, breaking taboos, showing a little bit more until the X-rated and everything's out there. And now we have porn, which is the biggest thing on the internet. And it's all limited by what the puberty that is like at the belly level. And what I'm showing is completely valid. You get a couple of Hollywood studios to make a nice, interesting movie about a couple that discover this, you're going to really change the planet.
Yeah, you'll plant a seed, an idea within people that'll have some profound effects. So I like the vision. It's captivating to think about that, to think about the possibility of a consciousness expansion and an evolution within our species just through things that we seem to discount or even discard in our everyday lives. It's beautiful. So my question that I like to ask at the end of these interviews is, what does it mean to you, Stuart, to live a liberated life?
Thank you. Thanks. That's a beautiful question. Like, I'm 73, so you have people of different ages. For me, it's like, in one sense, I lived a liberated life. I'm still living it, but I can look back over 50 years. Basically, it means that I did what I wanted to do was to help humanity. And I was given scholarships at Princeton, which is I took it seriously. It was a #1 university in America, and they gave me money. And their motto is "in service to the nation" or "in service to the world." And I thought I should do that. I worked in the youth prisons, and my friends, they became very successful lawyers. Sam Alito is a year younger than me. He's on the Supreme Court. So my peer group became very successful in the ordinary realm. But I thought I should help where it was the worst. So I was free. I was freed up from the mandate of an Ivy League degree to become a Wall Street banker. My roommate is a a partner at one of these places like Goldman Sachs. He's makes 100 million a year. Good for him. But so that was my environment. My liberation was I'm going to work with kids locked up in lockups. And then whatever I thought would work, I take a yoga class. This stuff works. I don't care if nobody ever heard of it before. So my whole career, green, nobody ever heard of it. Well, so what? It should be heard. People think they should have a divorce. I think they should find out about unconditional love. Let's try that. Or let's have a world conference on family, the family of humanity. And who am I? So I partner up with some friends. We get the Dalai Lama involved because of who I am. My reputation in India was very big. So I did whatever I wanted with as far as I wanted. Yoga, I took it 4 a.m. I married yoga. I got the fertility way off the charts in my own body. And then after 25, 30 years, I realized I could have partners because my body was mature, not the stuff that's taught nowadays about talking, but the real thing. And I wrote a book about it because it was so compelling. That you can have this liberation with a partner, without a partner, the bliss in the body. You can't tell which is better. It's a choice of abundance. So now, and I'll just add one more thing, is the real beauty, and it's how we met, is I have this friend, Michael Osterlink, who we have in common. And I've known him for
tomorrow.
You're going to see him here. 25 years. He is one of the most loyal and high-level person about giving and receiving. He turned me on to the Arete group where we met, and it's giving me a play like meeting you. It's giving me a blossoming of sharing my whole life, of having lived a liberated life. And my enlightenment was not self-referenced. It wasn't who am I? It was how far can humanity be uplifted in the worst places? That's what I thought liberation was for. Not personal is great, but I developed these powers of reconciling very difficult, dangerous situations and proved it to the world. It wasn't just my word. So I feel liberated from limitations. And who am I? I'd rather talk about you.
I love it. I love it. Stuart, thank you so much for being on the show. That's a beautiful answer. And a beautiful legacy that you've created in living your liberation through helping people in the worst areas and even continuing to do, even at 73 years old, there's more to be gained. And it seems like this is a new evolution of all of your experience being transcended into something that can help today, even just helping the people that you do in our circle with the Arete group and how these people impact many more people and it starts to spread more and more. So I sincerely appreciate you sharing your message and your story and the various stories of your experience on the show today. It's definitely been enlightening for me and is already causing me to think in different ways. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And you're an excellent interviewer because because I've been interviewed maybe 100 times or something. You ask really incisive questions that I loved. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I ask whatever inspires me in the moment, which is why I love these interviews to be unplanned and completely organic, because then we can get a very real and sincere conversation between the two of us, which is, I would say, one of the first steps in solving a lot of the problems that we experience as human beings is having a real and sincere conversation with one another and coming from that place of love and admiration. So thank you for having this conversation with me.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for taking it out to the public. We can have more ripple effects.
Absolutely. Stuart, are you doing anything these days online or anywhere that people can find you or contact you to maybe have you on their podcast if they're listening to this?
Yeah. There's a Stuart Sovatsky .com or something website on World Family. So you can, if you Google my name, you'll get, and my academia.com, which is a website of published papers. You can get free publications. Those are the two main ways. I'm very interested, as I alluded to at the end, of people in the film industry. That would really knock it out of the park if somebody partnered with me. I have a screenplay. I'm happy to share that with anyone that's really interested.
Excellent. Stuart, thanks so much, man. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It is my mission to help as many people as possible to live a liberated life with unshakable inner peace through the content on this podcast. Subscribe to this channel with notifications on to be notified daily whenever we share a new episode.